Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Apple Device Management for Beginners. I just wanted to come online quick and thank everyone who has joined us a bit early. We'll be starting in about 7 minutes right at the top of the hour. Thanks again, and we'll chat soon. Okay, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar, Apple Device Management for Beginners. My name is Jim Grambois, and I'm going to take you through today's presentation. Thanks again for joining us. Let's start with a quick look at the agenda. First, we're going to talk at a high level of who JAMF is and what we do. Then we'll take a bit of a dive into the different Apple programs and services that are available to IT to help with Apple deployments. After that, we'll take a look at the management lifecycle of Apple devices through the lens of JAMF Pro. And finally, we'll dig into best practices for infrastructure planning, where we'll look into some of the technical details on how JAMF Pro can fit into your infrastructure. We'll end with some next steps and Q&A as time permits. Okay, let's get started with just a little about JAMF. Our mission is to help organizations succeed with Apple. We only manage Apple devices, we don't manage Windows, and we don't manage Android. Our singular focus allows us to provide a best-in-class product for organizations to manage their Apple technology. Now, traditionally, we've helped organizations do this with our mobile device management solutions, JAMF Now and JAMF Pro. However, just as the landscape for device management is ever evolving, so is JAMF. And our product portfolio is bigger than ever. We've been working hard to add even more value to customers leveraging the Apple ecosystem. And through the acquisitions of Nomad and ZuluDesk, we've brought JAMF Connect and JAMF School into the family. We now have more ways than ever to help you succeed with Apple. Today's webinar will focus on the feature set of JAMF Pro has to offer again, but we encourage you to contact us for more detail around these other offerings. Today, more than 30,000 global customers rely on JAMF to manage over 14 million Apple devices. With over 1,000 full-time employees in 10 different countries, JAMF is committed to enabling IT to empower end users and bring the legendary Apple experience to businesses, educational institutions, and government organizations worldwide. We serve 9 of the top 10 tech companies, 20 of the top 25 Fortune 500s, 22 of the 25 most valuable brands in the world, and all of the top 10 marketing groups. We're also incredibly fortunate to be able to support over 14,000 schools. Another of our claims to fame, JAMF has a history of keeping up with Apple and providing day zero support for their new operating systems and new key management features. Here you can see our track record, and we're very proud of it. Now let's take a look at Apple's programs and services, which will support you as an IT administrator. JAMF works by leveraging Apple's push notification service, or APNS, to maintain a constant connection to your devices. It's the same service which sends notifications from your favorite app to your Apple device. All communication happens back to your JAMF Pro server and is kept secure. You can send various commands, apps, and profiles to your managed devices. And this is known as Mobile Device Management, or MDM, and it works on iOS, tvOS, and macOS devices. On the Mac, we take it one step further and install an agent for advanced Mac management. We'll take a deeper look at the agent just a little later in the webinar. For right now, we're going to focus in on MDM. MDM is Apple's built-in framework for managing their products. You build profiles which tell your devices the apps and settings they're supposed to have, and these profiles use the push notification service to get to your managed devices. You build these profiles, which are simple XML files, right inside JAMF Pro. Apple has this framework in place, and JAMF leverages it to make your Apple device management work. But there's a bit more to the puzzle to unlock all of the features Apple has to offer. Which brings us to Apple Business Manager. Apple Business Manager is the conduit which connects institutional Apple device and app purchases to JAMF Pro. It is also the tool that unlocks zero-touch enrollment workflows and allows for apps to be distributed over the air even without using Apple IDs. Let's take a look at what this portal has inside. First up, roles, where you delegate responsibility to different team members, such as an administrator who can do it all, or a content manager who is only able to procure apps. Next is the Apps and Books section, which is formerly known as VPP, or the Volume Purchase Program. This is where you manage app and book licenses. A token is generated here, which links your procured licenses to JAMF Pro. And finally, Devices. This was formerly known as DEP, or the Device Enrollment Program. This is where you add your JAMF Pro server, and there's another token to upload to JAMF to enable that zero-touch enrollment workflow that we talked about a moment ago, as well as a spot to see all of your purchased devices in one spot. If you're an educational institution, JAMF supports Apple School Manager with all of the same functionality we just spoke about with Apple Business Manager, while providing additional education-specific features, such as managed Apple IDs for students, SIS integrations, and Apple's Classroom app, and of course, shared iPad deployments. So this is what these features look like inside of JAMF Pro. After uploading those tokens I mentioned, you'll see this detail populate right inside of your JAMF Pro server. So these are the Apple programs you'll leverage alongside JAMF, and we integrate seamlessly. The Apple Push Notification Service, which establishes that trust between your JAMF server and devices. This is all run on that Mobile Device Management, or MDM framework, and depending on your organization, you'll leverage either Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager to unlock some additional features. So now that we have the right programs in place, let's talk over the life cycle management of these Apple devices. We'll use this workflow to do it. We'll start by deploying devices, configuring them, getting the right apps on them, gathering inventory data, ensuring they're secure, and ultimately providing our users a unique way to get apps and settings they need without needing to involve IT. So we'll start off here with zero-touch deployments. The Mac you see on the right is exactly how we give new JAMF employees their Macs with 3 easy setup steps. Open the box, power on the Mac, and there is no step 3. This same process works for Mac, iOS, and Apple TV. Let's take a look at the role of an end user opening up a new Mac and see how this goes. We'll start by booting up that Mac for the first time. We'll see the same old setup assistant most Mac users are familiar with. So let's start by picking our language and our keyboard. And we'll get connected up to Wi-Fi. Now, this does not need to be a corporate network at this time. It can be a home or a guest network. It just needs to connect to the internet in order to move forward to the next step, which is the remote management screen. If you're new to mobile device management, you may not have seen this before. What this is telling us is Apple and JAMF have identified this Mac as enrolled in Apple Business or School Manager, and it requires management which cannot be skipped by the end user. An admin may also choose to throw up an authentication challenge here, which can make end users log in with LDAP credentials for enhanced security. The next step is to create the local computer account. As an admin, you have the control over what type of account is created. It could be a standard account, it could be an admin account if you like, or you can skip this step altogether if you're using network-based accounts. Now our Mac is finalizing the process, and you may notice we didn't see many of the standard setup assistance steps, as our IT admin used JAMF to skip them because they were deemed unnecessary. And we get to the desktop, and you'll see a little notification in the top right corner. If we zoom in, we'll see it says, installing software and security settings, check out self-service for more resources, Heart IT. A very cute message from IT, and you have the creative freedom to have this say whatever your heart desires too. But what actually happened here? First, we wirelessly provisioned the device with JAMF thanks to automatic device enrollment with Apple Business or Apple School Manager. We then installed software using volume app distribution, and we set out security settings via Apple's MDM framework. Now when we zoom back out, we see this user self-service app, and we can see this Mac is fully managed and ready for the user to get going. If we take it a step further, inside System Preferences, we can actually see all the profiles and settings which were deployed here. Zero-touch deployment is the best, but if you have an environment which doesn't support that workflow, there are a couple other methods of enrolling devices. There are traditional imaging workflows, although these come with their own issues alongside Apple's newest hardware and software, as Apple does not officially support monolithic imaging anymore. And there's user-based enrollment, which you navigate to a unique URL to complete that process. All right, so let's move on to device configuration. We'll leverage Apple's MDM framework again for this, and there's a lot of options. Here's some examples we've categorized for you. In the basics, you can enforce passcodes, restrictions, VPN settings. With accounts, you can pre-populate email, calendars, and more. Under security, you can push certificates, enforce gatekeeper and file vault. And in advanced, you get more control of dock configuration, different accessibility needs, and a whole lot more. These are also great as they work across all of Apple's device ecosystem. Works on Mac, iPhone, iPad, and Apple TV. Now, specifically when it comes to Mac management, MDM is good, but sometimes you need a little more for Macs. You need to do some more advanced tasks like scripting, terminal commands, printer drivers. This is why we also have an agent that gets installed on the Mac. The JAMF agent is installed automatically when a Mac is first enrolled. It adds a hidden admin account, which gives the JAMF Pro admin remote root access. It will let you remotely run tasks like policies, scripts, software updates, and a whole lot more. Here's some of the things the JAMF agent is capable of doing, such as installing packages, binding to directory, installing printers, creating or modifying user accounts. So when it comes to Mac management, JAMF offers both the MDM framework as well as the JAMF agent for total Mac configuration. All right, we're deployed and we're configured now, but maybe not all the way. Do we have all the right apps? Let's dive in and make sure. If we're leveraging App Store apps, we can use Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager to buy all the necessary app licenses. In this case, we're getting 100 licenses of Keynote. That's a free app, by the way, but we still need to procure the licenses to deploy it via MDM. Those licenses are then read by JAMF Pro, and I'll use JAMF to scope which specific devices or groups of devices get that app. Then, via the MDM framework, those apps are installed over the air, really nice and easy, and the user doesn't need an Apple ID for all of this to work. With all that said, you may be thinking to yourself, that all sounds great, but we use apps that aren't in the Apple App Store, such as Adobe's Creative Suite or Google Chrome or Dropbox. That's where the JAMF agent comes into play again. With JAMF, you can do custom software installations. You can take snapshots of that software and create a custom package with a tool that's included with JAMF Pro called Composer. You can then upload that package to JAMF and push it out to your client Macs via the agent. Pushing software down is one part of the story, but we also want to keep that software up to date. Which is why we also have a patch management framework built into JAMF Pro. This allows you to do patching of third-party software titles, as well as Mac OS itself. We monitor specific software titles, tell you the eligibility of those devices for updates, and help automate the deployment of updated package files. It's really great as an end user too. All I do is get a little notification in the corner like this. In this case, it says, please update to Google Chrome as soon as possible. Now, I could allow the end user to update on their own, or I can force an update when I feel the time is right as an admin. So we deployed the devices, configured them, got some apps. Now let's gather some inventory data and make our lives a lot easier with some automations. JAMF Pro collects a ton of inventory data. A few examples you see here are computer name, IP address, Mac OS version, and app usage logs, which can show how often your users are in a specific app. With this data, we have a lot of info to build various groups. We can build two types of groups. The first type of group we create is a static one, where we very plainly say, this set of devices is a group. This could be a building, a specific business unit, a lab, whatever you'd like. After we make a group, we can tell JAMF Pro to apply configuration profiles or JAMF agent policies to the group instead of to one specific device. Smart groups, on the other hand, work sort of the other way around. We'll start by saying, find all devices which meet this specific criteria. JAMF Pro will then show you all the devices which fall into that smart group, and you can apply profiles and policies from there. So how does this come in handy? Here's a couple of examples. Starting with find all devices without a password. And with this search, I could very easily apply a password policy to all devices that are not compliant. In a similar vein, perhaps I want to find all devices that don't have File Vault turned on. All of these guys are not currently encrypted, and I can push out a profile to enforce File Vault. And find all devices without secure Wi-Fi. Same idea here. I'll get a list of every device that's not on my secure Wi-Fi, and I'll be able to push a new policy to ensure they get back to compliance. With all of these smart groups and policies, we can quickly see the health of our Apple fleet from the JAMF Pro dashboard. We can easily see how many Macs have File Vault turned on, have the secure Wi-Fi profile installed, or which ones are on the latest operating systems. You can take a snapshot of the dashboard for quick reporting to InfoSec or executives, or dive deeper into reporting for auditing and compliance. JAMF Pro gives you full visibility into your Apple devices. So next up, we've got some security controls. First off, if a Mac ever goes missing, you have some specific commands to help you, such as locking the Mac or remotely wiping it. On the iOS side, you have a few more commands, such as clearing the passcode, setting wallpaper, enabling lost mode, or shutting down the device. Really, there's many security controls you can leverage with JAMF Pro. Here's some common security tests that IT admins use to keep their Macs secure. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and highlight a few of these here, like enforcing password policies, Restricting system preferences. Perhaps you don't want people to be able to modify date and time. Restricting consumer features. Maybe you do or don't want people to have access to the camera or to iCloud Drive. Enforcing gatekeeper settings. You can stop people from installing applications from just the open web and restrict them only to the Mac App Store. And enforcing file vault encryption on your Macs. I can even go so far as to restricting specific apps. If I don't want specific software titles running on my Macs, I can create a policy which says, if I see this app running, kill that process and delete the app from the system. Next, let's talk a little bit about JAMF's self-service app. Self-service is your end-user portal that can be populated by IT-approved resources that employees can get with just a click. Easily install software, set up printers, configure email or VPN settings, notify your users about software updates, and you can even customize the app to be branded with your company's logo. Here we can see self-service in action. The user opens up the Acme app in the dock, which is the branded version of self-service. The user can then browse the home section to find IT-approved apps and resources. We see apps, printer drivers, maintenance scripts, ebooks, and more. If the user needs something, they simply click Install. IT can even set up categories to make it easy for users to find what they're looking for. There's a History tab to see what's been installed in the past. And finally, we can see any software that needs to be updated as well in the Updates section. All this is done without our user needing to submit an IT ticket and waiting for someone to fulfill the request. All of these IT tasks can be automated and placed into the hands of the users. No ticket required. By having to fulfill these types of common tickets, IT saves time and can focus on implementing other more strategic projects. So our last section of the day here is infrastructure planning. When we look at JAMF Pro, these are the core components, some of which we've talked about already. However, the actual pieces of JAMF Pro, we have a web application, which is Tomcat in Java. We have a database, which it talks to, which is MySQL, and we have some distribution points, which are SMB shares. All of that combined can be cloud hosted or run on premise. For cloud customers, we have data centers across the globe and upgrades are handled automatically. We use AWS as our infrastructure. On-premise can be ran on a Linux, Windows, or Mac OS server. Of course, JAMF isn't the only software in your environment. We realize that and truly believe in this philosophy, JAMF and whatever additional tools you need to get your job done. Here's just some of those tools, such as Active Directory, Single Sign-On, SCCM and Intune, Cisco, ServiceNow, and we have our own API. Let's take a quick look at a couple of these integrations. You can use any single sign-on provider which uses SAML, both to log into your JAMF Pro server, as well as to provide access to the self-service app. If you're running a Cisco network, you can leverage Fastlane, which lets you optimize network performance. For example, you could give WebEx the highest priority and ensure if someone is streaming video on their lunch break, that important meeting doesn't have bandwidth issues. You can also integrate with Cisco ICE for network control. You can have ICE look for unmanaged devices on the network and redirect them back to the enrollment screen. And if you're using Cisco Security Connector, you can deploy that to your supervised iOS devices to take advantage of those umbrella features. If you're using Intune for your PC management, we have an integration here too. You can send all your Mac inventory data to Intune to provide conditional access for the Mac, as well as a great user-friendly remediation path. Here's how it works. A Mac is managed by JAMF and is also registered with Intune. JAMF Pro shares inventory back to Intune, and Intune then takes a look at the compliance of that Mac. If it meets the specific criteria, access to protected company resources is granted. If Intune finds the Mac out of compliance, it will block access to those resources and provide a user-friendly remediation experience to get into compliance. We believe there are two major players in the enterprise and education, Microsoft and Apple, and we believe this is where JAMF sits, as the conduit which brings these worlds together. And there we have it. We've walked through the device lifecycle and taken a look at some of the other important considerations. As a quick recap of some of the points we covered today, JAMF integrates seamlessly with Apple's programs and services. And we have an Apple-focused product portfolio, which is here to help you and your organization succeed with Apple. JAMF also offers additional support to help you be successful. Our professional services offer on-location or remote engagements to customize JAMF Pro for your environment. We also offer certification courses led by our training team. You can become an expert in JAMF Pro and widen your skill sets. Finally, we have world-class support from Apple experts across the globe. We can even help 24/7 via our premium support packages. And speaking of world-class support, we're nothing without our customers, which is why we're incredibly proud of the JAMF Nation community. This community is over 85,000 members strong and is a free and open forum where Apple IT-focused individuals can learn from each other and gain best practices. As for next steps, contact us to get started at jamf.com. For any more detail on some of the things we've covered today, this would be a phenomenal place to start. We also have a great library of recorded webinars and other videos and resources available on jamf.com. Please do leverage these. And of course, join the discussion at JAMF Nation. That does bring us to the end of today's webinar. I really do thank everyone for joining us today. I'm going to take a few moments here to go through a couple of the questions that have come through today's webinar. So I do have one question in regards to Active Directory binding, which is certainly a feature of JAMF Pro. I'm not sure how many of you have potentially heard of Nomad. I mentioned it very briefly early on in the presentation. However, Nomad was a company that made a phenomenal piece of software, and JAMF acquired them almost a year ago. That's led to a new product called JAMF Connect, which can help to solve many of the issues that organizations face when trying to bind Macs to Active Directory, giving you many of the syncing features that you're looking for without the need to bind. I would strongly recommend touching base with us about JAMF Connect. We will be posting a recording of this presentation online in the coming weeks. Usually it's no more than 2 weeks, and typically it's a bit faster than that. Love this question. Is JAMF Pro Apple's application? So JAMF is 100% independent company, but we focus only on managing Apple products. So a lot of what we talk about is ultra Apple centric, as we are ultra Apple centric. This is another fantastic question. If somebody reformats a Mac, will the MDM be pushed again? So this one is actually conditional. So assuming that the Mac was procured through an Apple authorized reseller and the organization is leveraging Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager for zero-touch enrollments, it does not matter how many times that Mac gets wiped, it will show that remote management screen we saw earlier every single time. That's that zero-touch deployment strategy, and that's what non-removable MDM will be able to give you. All right, so if iPads are not enrolled in Apple School Manager but have previously been managed by JAMF, will the JAMF command still work on these devices? So I'm going to unpack this one just a little bit here. So a device does not need to be recognized by Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager to be enrolled in JAMF for management. This is a really common type of a question. You just unlock a lot more power when leveraging Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager. In a situation where you have devices that are managed but not part of those programs, I just spoke about non-removable MDM. If those devices get wiped and they're not part of Apple Business or School Manager, there's no way for it, when it goes back to the setup screen, to re-download the management profile. So it's an important consideration. And with that, folks, we are going to end today's webinar. I'm so sorry if I was unable to get to your question. However, we do want to talk to you and we want to answer that. I want to strongly encourage you visit us at jamf.com. We have many locations to call, and of course you can send us emails, fill out a form. We would love to connect. So again, I want to thank everyone for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your day.